Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I've been listening to this hearing, it occurs to me there's an irony and a paradox embedded in the hearing. We've heard the word premature about 100 times. The question is, and I'll quote the testimony of Ms. Lott, the American Society of Civil Engineers identifies severe weather as the predominant cause of customer outage, right? It's in your testimony. We're in a race with climate change. And we're talking about outages that are caused predominantly by severe weather, which is a result of climate change. So the question is premature. Actually, we should have been making this transition years ago, and we're trying to make it in a hurry because we are in a crisis situation. For the last million years, CO2 in the atmosphere averaged about 260 to 270 parts per million. Starting in about 1850, that started to rise steadily. Today, it's at 424 parts per million. I remember 10 years ago when I entered this body, it was under 400, and everybody said 400 is a tipping point. We're at 424 today. That's a 60% rise in about 150 years. And by the way, the last time we were at over 400 parts per million was 3 million years ago, and the ocean was 60 feet higher. So the question is, and I understand that it seems to me the heart of this hearing is timing. And what is the time period? Is it 5 years or 10 years, Mr. Robb? I understand the testimony, and basically what you're saying is we're trying to transition too fast. My question, and this is an honest question, is what's the right time period that we should be aiming at?
It's a terrific question, and it's a very tough policy problem, and I have sympathy for those who do this.
Could the record show that terrific question quote, please?
I believe, and I think most people studying the energy system says you need to keep balance between affordability, reliability, and climate. And if one gets out of whack, then bad things start to happen. And I think your question at its roots has, how much do you value having 24/7 energy available to support the way of life we've all become accustomed to?
And how do you avoid a crisis that will overwhelm any electric system?
And that's the question of balance that policymakers need to figure out and pursue.
So can you give me a year? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Should we?
I think it
depends.
The
retirement of coal plants, which are definitely.
Yes, Senator, I think it depends on what you believe about our ability to create batteries or other forms of storage that can create synthetic dispatchability from intermittent resources like wind and solar.
It's not synthetic dispatchability, it is dispatchability. If you have batteries plus renewables, that's a baseload plant.
And the question is, at what time do we have the duration that we need? Because right now, a 4-hour lithium-ion battery is incredibly helpful to the grid. It doesn't solve the wind drought problem.
I completely understand that. So the question is, how fast can we develop the battery or the storage technology, whatever it is, whether it's pump storage or something else, versus the contribution to the severe weather events, which are also, we're talking about this hearing as if the only risk is a lack of capacity, when in reality, the risk is severe weather events. So we've got to try to be.
And the issue is they're correlated, right? And we need to recognize that and find the right balance between them. But I think people need to understand the scale of this industry is enormous. So last year, we put 20 gigawatts of solar onto the system. That's the most we've ever put on in a single year.
That's only going to accelerate.
And that's only about 2% of the capacity of the United States. So even with everything that we've done to speed the development of renewables and so forth, with a static grid, we're on a 50 to 75-year trajectory to replace it. And the grid's not static because we're also trying to electrify transportation. It's a very smart thing to do.
I'm running out of time, but for the record, I'd like you to give me a number of years. How long should we delay the retirement of the fossil fuel plants, bearing in mind the acceleration of the climate risk?
I'm going to disappoint you, Senator. I can't give you a year. But we shouldn't retire them until they're replaced.
We've got to make decisions here as to, this whole hearing is about delaying the retirement. I want to know how long and how that relates to the rest of the risk. The other point I want to make, Mr. Chairman, we had a very informative hearing just before the break about small modular reactors and this country is falling behind in that technology. There's a danger of us losing whatever advantage we might have. I think we're going to need a CHIPS and Science Act 2 with regard to the development of small modular reactors to accelerate that development here in the country, because that will answer many of the issues that we're discussing today, both climate and reliability. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for calling. This is an important hearing.